Somebody did.
I rock it. Oh, thanks, Mike.
I don't know if they're gonna do anything, they fill it out. Yeah.
Ready to go?
That's why I was out.
Yeah, I think so.
Everybody's probably getting home now.
Everyone's here, but whatever.
I gotta stay in here.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Good evening and welcome. This is the pre-council meeting for Monday, September 18th, 2017 at 5:30. The Honorable Mayor Robert Odekirk presiding.
We'll begin with roll call. Mayor Odekirk.
Here.
Councilman Dickinson.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin. Here. Councilman Girl.
Here.
Councilman Hug. Absent. Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Here.
Councilman Turk.
Here.
First on the agenda is a presentation by Dr. Teresa Rouse. It's an update on Joliet Public Schools District 86.
Pom-poms, everybody.
Good evening. Hi. You have your pen.
Pom-pom.
We'll use those in just a minute. Thank you for allowing me to come back and present again. Last year I came and introduced myself to the City Council in a presentation. I thought it'd be an opportunity this second year to come back and give you an update. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for the time. And we'll move through the slides fairly quickly, but an opportunity for some conversation along the way if you so choose. So last year we set the stage by talking about building capacity for hope. We looked at H being the H of hope being humor, the O being optimism, the P perspective, and the E expectation. Those things have served us well as we've pursued our growth in the district. But this year we want to take a little bit of a different stance. We are still focusing on hope because we can't give up on hope. It's what we need to have in our lives. But we need to add a little bit of a new layer to the idea of hope, and that being the focus on equity. So we're looking at equity of hope being our theme for this year. Now I want to talk for just a minute so that we have clarity on what I mean by equity. If you look at the picture on the screen, on the left side, you notice there's 3 different individuals who've all been given the same size box. That still doesn't help all of them see over the fence. But on the right-hand side, they've been given different sizes and different capacity for their ability to be able to rise to the occasion and see over the fence. This is the difference of equality, giving everybody the same thing, and equity, giving everybody what they need. I could give you all a pair of shoes, but if they're not the size shoe you need, it wouldn't do you any good. So this is what I mean by equity as we're working with our students this year with equity of hope. We want to be sure that all of our students have access to the same opportunities, but by providing for their individual needs. This equity work takes us into the notion of cultural proficiency, where we're looking at this moral imperative along the way in the journey. So it doesn't focus just upon race or ethnicity, but all cultures that are represented within our school district. Those involve gender, they could involve different religions, every possible culture that exists. Are we truly proficient in how we approach those? And there's some key factors that we need along the way to ensure our success. The essential elements of cultural proficiency provide us a guideline as we move our work forward. We need to ensure that each of these elements are met as part of our organization's journey in order to ensure an appropriate path to success. We want to make certain that we have addressed these areas. The guiding principles of cultural proficiency also help to provide and guide our thinking as we move forward. These principles are important that we're aware of them and that we're acknowledging the need to adjust our thinking at times based upon these pieces, our practice and our thinking, so that we can make a difference for all of our students. In focusing on cultural proficiency, we look at this continuum with the idea of hoping that we can move our work from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. I don't know if you've ever heard people talk about, well, those kids. No, those are our kids. And we're working on changing that mentality so that we're not talking about others as if they don't belong to us or with us, but that they're part of the greater scheme. So as we look at this continuum, we're looking at becoming more proactive in our work versus being reactive as we move along the way. We will encounter some barriers. I think the road sign is kind of apropos, given how many roads are tore up right now in town, but just saying. But we will encounter some barriers along the way, but we have to acknowledge these. There's a barrier around the presumption of entitlement, systems of oppression, unawareness of the need to adapt, and resistance to change in general. We need to focus on these and really make certain that we've taken these barriers out of the way so that we can make a difference for our students. These thoughts around equity and cultural proficiency have led us to refocus our strategic plan for a five-year time period. The first goal is related to cultural proficiency, and it's the true foundation of where we need to go as a district, and I would say as a community, as we look at all of these different cultures that are before us. Another goal that we're focused on is that of early literacy, looking at the idea of closing the opportunity gap for our youngest students. We still have kindergartners coming to kindergarten who have never been in school before, and many of them, almost half, know maybe 4 letters of the alphabet. So we have an opportunity gap that we need to close in those preschool years and in early kindergarten so that we can have our students learning at mastery. By grade 3, we'd like to have all of our students at mastery of grade level content. They're not there yet, but that's what we're working toward. The idea of moving from learning to read, but reading to learn, so that they're able to access all of the content that they need as they progress in their educational career. Mastery by grade 8 is the notion of helping to ensure our students are truly ready for high school. We have a great high school system to feed into, and we want to make certain that we're giving them the best possible students to be successful in that high school program. Digital citizenship is another area that we're working on to make certain that we're really being good critical consumers of the digital media that's available to us. These goals are built upon the notion of these 4 pillars that provide the framework for how we're going to be doing our work over the next 5 years. The notion of being a culturally responsive organization, how are we truly looking at all of those pieces to ensure that we are providing equitable access, that we are results focused, and that we have strong partnerships with families in the community. As we move toward this idea of this new strategic plan, we have to kind of look at a revision of how we look at our mission and vision. We've been collecting over the last several months what I'm calling promise words. My assistant Stephanie's going to be distributing to you a piece of paper, and I'd like for you to, as I talk just a little bit more here, think about what are 5 words that you think of when you think of a quality education that you think would be a good promise to our students. Now, I've asked this question of our Board of School Inspectors, and they came up with words that led to this word cloud. I've asked this question of our district council, and they came up with words that look like this in a word cloud. We ask our student leadership the same sort of question, and the words that they chose show up in this word cloud. So I want to just give you just a minute as I wrap up this presentation. I'd love for you to write down at least 5 words on that piece of paper for me, because I'm going to collect them in just a minute. Words that you think of when you think of what would be a high quality education, what needs to be there, what are attributes of it, what are critical elements to have as a promise to our families. As you're doing that, I'll go ahead and continue to talk through these last couple of slides. Why do we do what we do? Why do we work the crazy hours we work? Why do we deal with all the things we deal with? It's because of the students that come into our classrooms every single day. Our hope is that you're going to join us in partnership as an organization to help us look at how we bring the community at large more involved in our schools. We're developing and launching a district partnership council. And I would love to have a couple of city council members, at least 1, maybe 2, who would be willing to join us. We're going to meet 3 times this year. I have an invitation here for somebody who might be interested to join us for that council, with the idea being that we want to strengthen the partnerships that we have, but also to develop more partnerships so that we can ensure that we're all working together down the same path for our youth, for the pre-K through 8th grade population of this wonderful city. We have a lot of great things going on here. I think the more we work together, the more we wrap our arms around our youth, the better we're gonna make Joliet for everyone in the future. So, writing down your 5 words. I'll come and get those. I have invitations. Any questions or comments?
When are the meetings?
I have them on the invitation here. There's November 13th, February 26th, and April 23rd. And we're scheduling them so that partners can come during their workday. So it's like a 3:30 to 5, so that we can try to accommodate without having yet another evening meeting. So even if it's a city council night, you could still come. Because we'd be done by 5, and you start at 5:30. So just saying.
Okay, I'm in.
Okay, yay. I knew I'd get somebody.
Got me. I'm in.
Betty's in too? Okay.
Okay. That's it. Only
That's
2.
it. Go on 2. Only 2. I know the rules. So you have your 5 words?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll give this to you. Okay. There we go. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
You're not great, you know, spell it, are you?
All good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the work that you're doing. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Any
you.
questions or comments?
Just a comment. Thank you again for coming in front of us, keeping us updated. You're doing a great job, so thank you very much for what you do.
We're having a lot of fun.
Good.
We're having a lot of fun. We got a lot of great staff. We got a lot of great kids and families. And, you know, I think you're going to see the notion of the perception of schools in Joliet changing as we go forward in time. And I'd love to see you all consider as a city council as well, you know, those athletic signs? Those are for state wins. You know, there's some national wins that are going on in our schools, and there'll be some more state wins. And there may be other schools that can reach the same accomplishments, but wouldn't it be great to have the names of our schools that are reaching those accomplishments show up on those nice electronic signs or the green signs? Just a thought.
It's a good thought. I agree.
We could put lights around them.
Yeah.
Some lights on. Yeah, I like it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have citizens to be heard on agenda items. First is Tom Kniff, Council Memo 507-17.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to come and present to you regarding the synthetic turf bid. I'm with Midwest Sport and Turf. We're local around the corner in Plainfield. We submitted a bid for $471,400, considered the low bid. And I know what the thought is in terms of low bids. An analogy is I've got 3 kids, 2 daughters. I shop for 2 of the daughters every Christmas looking for a pair of boots. I look online and they all look the same and go, oh, those are expensive. They must be good. They look the same on the other. They're not as expensive. They can't be as good. The reason our bid was significantly less, and it's $115,000, than the existing bid is the fact that we're local. We don't have to mobilize a crew to get up here. That requires, usually when we go on these jobs, we cover a large area in the Midwest. We're required to put these folks up in hotels to install. So we're local. We don't have to mobilize our field. We are the largest fiber manufacturer in the world. So if it's a concern about who we're working with and what we're doing, it is significant. One of the things that was written, we don't meet the specifications. And I took the time to go over individual specs that were written for this particular bid. And we actually meet and exceed every single one of them. And I can document it. And I can document it. We did Labosport testing, which is the turf provider or company that does third-party independent testing on synthetic turf as a comparison so that it validates it. I do have this information as well. The 2 things that we don't comply with, it specifically said you cannot have holes in the back of the fiber, all right? That's how we drain. That's every turf company does that except for Field Turf, which is the next bid. And they have a patent on their technology. We can't access it. The other piece is they had asked for a coolant on the system as an alternate bid. I think I sent most of you an email. Hopefully you all read it. There's a quiz just like before. And there's nothing out there. It's a holy grail of synthetic turf. There's nothing that will cool the turf. Essentially what it is it's encapsulated cork. You put it on the turf itself and it's supposed to cool down. Let's think logically. What happens with turf? The sun hits it, It's a thermodynamic effect. It excites the molecules heat up the fibers. It has nothing to do with what you put on top. You cannot cool down a turf. I wrote Andy McNitt, he's the professor at Penn State. They do a lot of testing on synthetic turf. They validate a lot of the turf for the various companies out there. And my question, I'm gonna have in an email, I'll be able to provide it to you, was, Andy, is there anything out there that you know that will cool a surface temperature down 20 or 30 degrees? And his answer, short answer, is there's nothing out there. It's kind of like you're putting in something that will never benefit you, and that's an additional $65,000. I implore you to look at this before you say, we don't meet the specs, because I'm sure when you see what specs I give you and show you what's presented, I think you're gonna be astounded. The spec and the bid that we provided was for a 40-ounce product. Who owns a house here? Yay? You ever bought a carpet? You ever go to the carpet store and say, yeah, I'm thinking about getting a carpet, and I want a carpet with the least amount of fibers? That makes no sense. We're giving you a carpet for $471,400 with 40 ounces of fiber. The bid called for 33 ounces. So we're increasing the amount of fiber in that particular product. In addition, every company will provide an 8-year warranty. We're local, we have our own crew, we don't have to sub it out, so our folks will be able to take care of this. We have a rule of thumb, we will be on the job if there's an issue, and every field's gonna have an issue regardless of whose you do. We live in a climate, there's expansion and contraction. We'll have somebody on the field within 24 hours fixing it, not looking at it and saying, yep, your field's broken. So I implore you to look at this before you absolutely say, let's go. And if I can ask if there's interest, we've got several fields in the area. If you'd like to see them personally, and you can attest to the quality of work and the quality of our technology that we have. So I do have information for you. I don't know who would like it. I also put in here, there's a Labosport test, and there's a specific test they look at, and what they measure the durability of the turf by running a roller over it. And the ASTM standards are 20,200 hours would be considered acceptable for a turf.
Could you talk to him, Mason? Thank you.
Our particular turf that we're gonna put in, it's based on the bid, it's a slit film product, has withstood 150 cycles on this Lisport machine, or Labosport machine. And what it is, it's rollers that will roll over the turf to simulate usage. And when they will measure it, so 150,000 cycles on that turf, you want that to last, all right? It's about aesthetics, safety, and the only thing, like I said, the only things that we don't match is the perforations in the back. We have to have them to drain. It's not gonna affect the safety or efficacy of the turf. Every other turf company in the world perforates their backing and don't eliminate it for $115,000. There's a lot of things you can do with the $115,000. You can make signs for the schools, for the kids that are doing the academic, great stuff. So thank you for your time, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Wait, Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
Yes.
Where did you say some of the turfs were that we could look at?
We've got 4 schools in Tinley Park, Oak Forest, Bremen. We've got the school. We've got the Milliken School. They've got the football and the baseball. We just put a field down at Montrose. We've got a field up at Lake Forest University. So these fields are certainly accessible. We can see them. We've got a couple fields in
How long have they
India.
been in place?
How long have they been in place? We've been in business as a company. This is a distributorship for Greenfield. The ones in Chicago, we just put them in, and the south side at 228 within the last 4 months, all right? The one up north in Lake Forest, we put in this summer. Down at Milliken, it's been in for 2 or 3 years. So Greenfields has been in business for over 14 years. That's our distributor. We are a subsidiary of Tenkata. Tenkata is known for making fibers. They extrude all the fibers for all of our firemen's jackets, all of our police and our soldiers. This is what they do. So it's a subsidiary of that, and actually we're in the business of protecting people. So it's a company that's been around, we're financially stable, and again, if you look at, we have more fields, FIFA certified, which is a soccer, it's not gonna affect the baseball, FIFA certified 2-star fields than anybody in the world. And I'd be happy to provide that list to you.
And it's comparable to what we want to put in at the ballpark?
Yes.
Mayor, when I was reading this, it said they didn't meet our specs. So what specs aren't they meeting?
Marty?
Do you want me to just cover? I mean, we can cover it now if you want. I mean, it's on the agenda. So if you just want to have that gentleman sit down, I can kind of run through it now, I guess.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So let's talk about bids and contracts. So So this is Council Memo 507-17. So this is a request for authorization to award a contract for the Joliet Minor League Baseball Park synthetic turf. So last week, a team of our consultant, who's in the audience today, as well as myself, David Ortiz, and Jim Trisna, we took a tour to visit all these various turfs and these various products. So these are all, one thing that, I mean, we all noted, these are all very nice products, of course, but then there were some obvious differences from all these different fields. So we started with a visit to Plainfield Central High School, which has the field turf, which would be similar to our base bid because it didn't have the cool play. So we talked extensively with personnel from Plainfield Central, who all explained that they were very happy with the field turf. And then when we're there, we're on the turf. I mean, we're pulling the turf, we're sticking our fingers, into it. I mean, we're really, trying to do the best we can to try to get a good feel what the turf is. So then the next site we went to was Batavia, who also has field turf and cool play. And cool play is a composite non-rubber top layer of infill material. And then we also spoke with Batavia personnel, and Batavia, they were also, and this is the athletic director and the director of building and grounds, and those types of, they were again happy with their product. And one other thing that they had mentioned with the cool plays is, I don't think it necessarily cools the surface, but it keeps it cooler than the surface would be otherwise. And they actually had, and explained to us, one of those heat guns, and compared to their track versus, which is, all dark colored material, versus their field, which has the the lighter colored top layer. They indicated to us that their field is essentially as much as 20 degrees cooler, the field is, as opposed to the track. Now it's it's apples to oranges because it's a track versus a field, but that's something that they explained to us firsthand, and we asked both groups, hey, if you were to do this again, what would you do differently? Really, both of them were essentially nothing.
Marty, question?
Yes.
They compare it. See, the track is a composite
Oh, I know,
rubber.
it's black.
Right, and whereas the field turf is individual fibers, which has got more surface area to cool, just like a baffle, like a radiator. So obviously a track will be hotter than a field, regardless.
Right. No, we understand that, but he just told us he has a little heat gun, and he shot it on the track and shot it on the field, and it was cooler. Okay, so then we also went to a field in Rockford, which is a product by, I believe, the low bidder, and there were noticeable differences between the products. And like I said, they're all very good products, but then there was one of the differences, we tried pulling out again the fibers on the field turf, and then I was actually able to pull out some of the fibers of the other one. So it didn't, and when these fibers are 1 3/4 inch, and then the ones that we're recommending with their bid is 2 1/4 inch. And then another thing that we noticed with this field, again, these are all very good fields, but when you try to pull up the fibers on the field turf, it really didn't pull up much because there's a ballast of sand. But in this other field, if you pull it up, it would lift up like a section maybe about the size of this paper up with the turf itself. So we didn't note that with the field turf, which has a ballast of sand mixture, which holds the fibers in place. And by happenstance, I was also at Wheaton North this past weekend, and then they also have field turf. So I mean, we've seen there's quite a bit of fields around us locally that have field turf, and I went on the field and observed the product, which is similar to the others. So to summarize, we're recommending the field turf with a split fiber, and now I learned so much about turf. So this is a monofilament, which is just a single blade. I'll just keep going. So a split fiber is the top of it actually is, think of it like a split hair in your head, where it has,
Split ends.
Split ends, yes. So what it does is the product itself, it will encapsulate it, which will keep it from, moving around more, and it reduces splashing, which is another term. If you throw a ball, splashes up the material, but if you use a split, you know, okay. So again, I have our consultant here, if you have any questions for him, and I think the representative from Field Turf is here also. So it was all very interesting. You know, Mr. Trisna is here as well. I don't know if he has anything to add.
Any questions?
Marty, who does the Joliet schools have in the Park District? Are they one of these bidders?
You know what? I'm not sure.
Okay.
Not Field Turf? Okay.
It's who? Who is it?
It was Mondo went for the Park District, and it was Sprinter for the high school.
Question, Mayor. Do you know, is Lincoln Way actual field turf, all four, they used to have four, and what about Sandburg?
I don't know. I don't have it. Yeah, those are all field turf.
I've spent a little time on field turf. Okay.
Are we definitely going with the cool play on top?
Well, that's just our recommendation.
Because when we had that meeting in here, I asked for more information, and he was supposed to send me an email, and I never received it.
Do you want to touch on, you know, have the Field Turf talk about? Do you want to talk about it?
Hi, I'm Jonathan Heward with Field Turf here locally. I'm based out of Glen Ellen, and I just wanted to, I guess, clarify a few things with our company and our proposal. First of all, I've been with Field Turf for over 15 years. I started with the company way back when it was a new concept, and have been with Field Turf, same company, in the same area ever since then. And since 2002, 2003, we've installed roughly 300 fields in just Illinois. So a majority of the fields that you do see around here are our product. Along those lines, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. We do things a certain way. A lot of people call our product, any of these products, Field Turf. We're kind of the Kleenex of the industry now. So I'm often asked to clarify some of the differences between our products and some of the others. And when we came out with Field Turf years ago, it was really to compete against the old style AstroTurf, the carpet over a pad. And our whole company's premise was to design something as close to natural grass as possible. And while doing that, we came up with various components that are very specific to our product. We patented a lot of those features that we find are beneficial. And ever since then, most of the other turf companies in the industry have had to kind of work around our designs. You know, I know it was mentioned that, you know, fiber ounces per square yard is important. That is important if you're buying carpet. And we're not selling you carpet, we're selling you a system. And that system is the carpet plus the infill. And they work together. And by one of our features is using a wide gauge design, meaning we don't want the carpet too dense like the old AstroTurf. We want it spaced enough that we can put a proper amount of infill in there, because the infill is where you get your cushioning, it's where you get your traction, and it's where you get your safety. Whereas the old turf was a shorter, denser carpet over a pad, your safety is all coming from that infill, which can move around. So having the proper ratio of infill is paramount for safety, for the cushioning, for the traction. You don't want too much traction, you don't want too little traction. And that's not even taking into account performance of putting in a nice baseball park, where, you know, comparing carpet to carpet, in my opinion, is a waste of time, because what we're looking at is comparing the systems, not just the one component of that. And the reason we use a lower pile weight is so we can put more infill in that same amount of space. So less ounces per square yard is only because we use a wider gauge fiber, a wider gauge spacing, and it allows us to put usually extra pounds per square foot of infill in our system. On top of that, the system that you have specified is unique to Field Turf in that it's a 3-layer infill. So what we're doing is we're putting down a ballast layer of sand that'll hold the carpet down so you can't pick it up. Then about an even mixture of a silica sand and cryogenic rubber, which are very small sized particles, so they don't splash, they do stay put and stay even. And then a final layer of a larger size rubber on top, or in the alternate case, the cool play, which it's not a cork, it's an extruded mineral composite. And it's been proven with the same labs that test all the other components of turf that it can reduce the field temperature by roughly 35 degrees. And that is because the fiber does absorb some heat, but the infill itself absorbs more heat than the fiber. And so reducing the temperature of the top layer will reduce the temperature of the overall of the field. And so the Cool Play for us has been very popular in the southern states, and it's becoming more popular here in the Midwest as a lot of these fields are now used throughout the entire summer. If it's at a school and it's not being used by the school, it's rented out for youth sports. And so this Cool Play option is very popular now, and it's, you know, I'm pricing it out on a majority of projects. Last thing I wanted to say, talking about local workers. So again, I've been here locally for 15 years. My installers are based out of Barrington. They 100% work for field turf only. We've got, in the heat of the summer, we've got roughly 50 employees that work for us only. And we're able to do upwards of 40 fields in the Chicagoland area in the summer on time. All of our workers go home and sleep in their own beds at night. We're not traveling installers like some of the other companies are forced to use. So that being said, one of my biggest benefits now, having so many fields in the area, is customer experience. You're not just buying the turf and I'll see you in 10 years. One of the things I pride myself on is once we install your field, if you ever have a problem, you will need to call us at some point in time. Baseball fields need a lot of TLC. We can have someone out there same day in most cases. So just want to clarify those things.
Any questions?
Mayor, not to split hairs here, but have we talked to the Park District on how they are doing with their turf, and do they have a Cool Play on that turf, and how's it worked out this summer and last year?
I know they don't have Cool Play.
You talking about the Memorial Stadium?
Yes.
That field was installed quite a few years ago, and Cool Play wasn't really around at that time.
Did you install that field?
I did not. It was a company, Kiefer Mondo.
Okay, and do we know why they didn't bid?
No.
That was sole sourced for that company. Nobody else could bid on that one at the time.
Excuse me? No one else could bid on that?
No, not this. No, we couldn't. I don't even remember if we turned in a bid on that.
Yeah.
Nobody else could bid in the Park District.
Oh.
Park District
okay.
one was set up for a certain product, which was fine, but that's why, you know.
Okay, thank you.
So.
Your Honor, just one question. On the infill, does that have to be done every so many years, or does more infill have to go into that periodically?
When the field's done, we leave you with some attic stock, you know, an extra bag of it or so to leave. Mainly what you're doing is you're topping up the high traffic areas. Long story short, you don't need to top the whole field. You will be, you know, as part of the routine maintenance, topping up the high traffic areas. So in your case, on the baseball field, the sliding areas, the home plate, the pitcher's mound, on a regular basis. That's just part of the routine maintenance. On a soccer field, it's usually the penalty kick areas, goalie box. But I would say out of all artificial turf fields, baseball needs the most maintenance for those high traffic areas. And when the field's completed, part of our closeout is we do a full maintenance training. We have videos, you know, we're always available to come out and help with that. But yeah, one of the main priorities for baseball is keep that infill topped up on the sliding areas, because if it displaces and pushes away, that's your cushioning.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Another question. What does it cost yearly to maintain that field?
It's primarily labor. Part of our price includes the equipment, which is pulled behind most likely a tractor or a gate or something that they would have already. And it's mainly the labor to run that equipment as needed, but usually about a handful of times a year. And then the labor for someone to, you know, visually inspect the field, add some infill as we talked in the high traffic areas. But those are really the two main functions.
What's the cost?
Well, it's whatever the you know.
To maintain it yearly to up to the standards that you're talking about.
No more than $5,000.
A year?
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yes.
Think of this, you know, what he explained is a Zamboni for a field or a mower. Now, we were able to, on one of our trips, see one of these things. There's two things that you can do. Number one is you brush it, and that just kind of, you know, keeps it...
Fluffs it up and levels it out.
And then the other one is one that has more...
It's got metal tine. So there's two pieces, a groomer and a sweeper. The sweeper's used just to pick up loose debris. The groomer's got three functions. There's a row of metal stars that get down into the infill. It's like an aerator, it fluffs it up. Behind that is a metal rake that will then pick up any fibers that get trapped during that process. And then the third step is there's a drag brush behind that that will then level it out. Each of those pieces can be used together independently. And that's done maybe 5 times a year.
So Mayor, that was actually one of our questions that we had to the different schools is what does it take to do this, or what kind of expertise you have? And it's really none. You just drive up and down the field this way and then drive up and down the field this way. So it does take
Plus adding the infill to those high traffic areas for baseball, but that's exactly it.
Okay. Question, is Joliet Memorial Stadium, is that actually field turf then?
No, both the high school field,
Joliet Memorial
Memorial is no, that's a brand called Mondo, installed by the local distributor Kiefer.
Okay, and just from personal experience, you may not know, I mean, did you guys install the Lincoln Way Central Field?
I did all 4 of those.
Okay, what was the year of the Lincoln Way Central Field? Do you remember?
I want to say 2006 for Central and East, and then we did North in 09 and West in 10 or 11.
Okay, and what about Sandburg?
Sandburg, Stagg, and Andrew, we did all in 2010.
2010, okay. And I had one other and you said your fibers don't come up? You said the fibers don't come up as easily?
No, we tried.
I was at Plainfield Central Friday night. I was at Marist High School yesterday. And we walked off with nothing but green fibers on ours. Do you have Marist High School too?
We do have Marist High School.
What's all the green fibers on our socks?
So that's a different fiber. It is a monofilament fiber that we had installed there. And one of the things that we are actually in the process of doing there is we call it a remediation, where we go in and beef up the tough bind. One of the challenges with a monofilament fiber, which is not what we proposed here, is that monofilament fibers are individual strands that are tufted through the backing. So you usually have about 8 fibers in a bunch that get looped through the carpet. To hold the fibers in place, it's coated with urethane underneath. And there's a challenge to coat monofilament fibers thoroughly so that every fiber is touched with the right amount of urethane, so that some of the ones on the inside loop don't pull out. So anyway, that's something we had a couple fields that need to be fixed like that. So we go in, and we're going to actually be going back there soon to pull out the infill, bump up the tough bind with a coating on the top, and then put the infill back in. We've done that on a handful of fields around here already.
And what does that cost?
Nothing. It's under warranty.
And Plainfield Central is not a monofill?
It is. Let me think. Plainfields? No, all 4 Plainfields are slit film. It's the same fiber that we proposed here.
Yep. With respect to your baselines and the batter's boxes, are those painted on, and how often do you have to repaint those? What's the maintenance like on that?
Sure. The home plate is typically all permanent turf. So all the markings you'll see out there would be permanent for baseball. And again, the key is if you keep the infill topped up, those lines should not peel up. If they do, it's an easy fix. You call us, we come out. Like I said, the most maintenance and service you're going to need is going to be regarding the home plate, the right and left batter's boxes, the catcher's area, the pitching mound, and where the pitcher lands with their foot, and sliding into second base. If you keep the infill topped up on those, they'll last you a long time. I was just out at Arlington Heights Park District, Mellis Park. We did their 4 softball infields. They're rented out. Each one of those fields has over 600 games a year on it. I was just out there last week doing a refresher training for them. One of the 4 fields we haven't touched in all that time. The other ones we had planned on, those high traffic areas, we know that they wear about every 5 years. You need to swap out those kind of cutouts. And we just did that this past spring, and those areas are brand new. And so we went out there just to talk about best practices for maintenance. But if you take care of those areas properly, they last a long time.
Thank you.
I think we're good, thank you. Sure. I just have one question for Marty. What was the difference in the bids again?
You know,
I can look it up.
when it gets back to me, I'll give you the answer.
All right.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on an agenda item?
On what you're talking to about fiber degradation, it's the loss of fiber. Every company's gonna have that, and it has to do with, there's a test, and it's called tough bind, and how many pounds of pressure it takes to pull those blades out. If you look at the independent study by Lavelsport, our slit film on the product we're proposing is 11.2 pounds of pressure to pull it out. The specifics we're asking for 8 pounds. So you can pull any fiber out. There's not if, ands, or buts. And so the bottom line is, if you look at ours in terms of the tough bind ability to plow, it's a higher tough bind than anything else in the industry.
All right, thank you. Krista?
Anyone else that would like to speak on an agenda item?
I have one more question for the young man that was just up here.
Well,
Oh,
we'll
I'm
get
sorry.
back to you.
Okay.
No,
All right,
sit
sorry.
down. Go ahead, sir. Come on up.
Sorry, Mayor.
No.
Good evening. Ken Carlson on behalf of Mid Central Enterprises. Mike Petrie is also here with me.
Yeah.
I was hoping to just briefly discuss the matter that's on your agenda for the redevelopment agreement for the Barber Building. We work with staff and Corporation Council to come up with that draft agreement. I think the only issue that's outstanding that we'd ask for your consideration on relates to the parking issue. Based on our calculations, we expect that the Barber Building, when developed for apartments, will take about and the little building next to it, will take about 60 spaces. It's difficult to take one of these old buildings, rehab them, get them in a position to have market rents, and then tag the parking fee on top of that. Mr. Petrie is asking your consideration to waive the parking fee for those buildings pursuant to that development agreement. We understand the issue. I mean, staff has relayed to us their concerns about, you know, those parking spaces take maintenance, and we get that. I think the difficulty that you guys have is, if we want to try to continue to bring residential downtown, you know, Mr. Petrie believes that tagging the parking fee on top of that and being competitive is very difficult.
Yeah, I know we've talked about parking, and I've talked about with staff. I'm not sure that we're gonna negotiate publicly, though.
I would agree with that.
Okay. All right.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak on an agenda item? Seeing none, we'll pass it over to the city manager to discuss the items for tomorrow night's agenda.
I'm going to run through the agenda for tomorrow. CTIS, Economic Development, Finance, and Public Service Committees will all provide their reports. There are 5 items on the consent agenda: approval of minutes, invoices paid reports, 2 regular payrolls, and position vacancies, job descriptions. Public hearing will be tabled to October 3rd of 2017. That is approving the annexation of 4 acres located at 2121 South Chicago Street. There are no ordinances under resolutions. Council Memo 500-17, resolution authorizing the purchase of 833 to 837 South Richards Street as part of the Blight Reduction Program. 2 parcels totaling 5 units will be purchased as part of grant funds received from the Illinois Housing Development Authority.
Mayor,
Yes.
why do we not have any pictures of these properties?
We already had deemed these as nuisances and blighted property.
Right, but usually we get pictures again.
Oh. Yeah, we can get
Just
some pictures
refresh
for.
our memories.
We can get some pictures for tomorrow's meeting.
Thank you.
Council Memo 501-17, resolution granting authorization to enter into a regular 2017 Justice Assistance Grant intergovernmental agreement between the City of Joliet and Will County. This IGA is anticipation of receipt of a grant and a receipt of a grant award in the amount of $26,243, which is half. Will County will get another $26,000. And it is anticipated this will be used to purchase a drone with the city's funds. Council Memo 502-17, a resolution approving a TIF development agreement with Mid Central Enterprises. This is the Barber Building, currently being rehabbed by a group which includes Mike Petrie. I'm going to turn it over to Steve Jones.
Thank you, Marty. In your packet is a full-blown agreement that's taken months and months and months for us to get to. In short, it's a redevelopment project that deals with the eventual development of 35 units, up to 35 units of multifamily downtown, along with commercial space. For those of you who may not be familiar with the building, it is the limestone building directly across the street from the Chamber of Commerce. One of the reasons that the agreement negotiation has been around for a while is due to the fact that we have had some issues with regard to the conventional lending market being able to have their loan-to-value ratios meet what the true cost of redeveloping some of these buildings are. Council recall probably about 3 months ago, we had just a real general discussion about this when we were considering the potential for loans versus grants versus TIF rebates to help make this project happen. We basically found sort of the secret sauce between grant funds with the city, $250,000 grant, along with the $150,000 of city center partnership commitment from the SSA to basically help fill that lending gap that exists to get the project off the ground. This is really a great project. It certainly meets the intent of our downtown plan. It's in a perfect location to help dense up the downtown area and create some of that multifamily that we've talked about. As Ken had indicated earlier, really the only issue that remains sort of unresolved between the parties is the issue of parking. At the present time, for folks who have residential units downtown, if they wanted parking privileges in either of our 2 decks, it does equate to about $40. It equates to $40 per month to guarantee parking access. The developer has asked for free parking. Our counter to that was that the developer or his tenants pay the current prevailing wage of the parking, which is $40. And from our perspective, that is an incentive, from the simple reason that we anticipate that there will be recommendations coming forward to actually increase the parking rate downtown. As some of the council members who have been around for a while recall, back in 2015, the city was handed a study that talked about the need for approximately $2 million of total repairs within our parking decks. In addition to that, we know that the revenues and the expenses of our parking fund basically aren't real conducive to sustainability, and we've been looking at a number of ways where we could help make that system more sustainable. The rate study that's in process has not yet been presented to council, and we expect that within the next several months there will be a recommendation for consideration for additional revenues downtown. So in effect, as I said, we think that from our perspective, locking the fees in for this particular development is an incentive. It would basically allow the developer and his tenants for the life of this agreement to basically stay at that $40 rate. Now, obviously, there's no guarantee that the city council will approve rate increases, but I think in view of the fact that there are some serious needs within the decks for rehabilitation, and as I said, the sustainability of the parking fund still needs to be established, we think that it's very likely that there is going to have to be somewhat of an infusion of revenue somewhere. Parking isn't free. Parking does cost. And in effect, we think the spirit of this agreement basically accommodates the need for residential parking, but at the same time makes it something that does not result in about $34,800 of revenues that would not be coming to the city. So that's the logic behind our parking issue. But on the whole, this is a great project. It's exactly what TIF and SSA is for, which is to encourage the type of development that will enhance our downtown. And certainly we applaud Mr. Petrie. He's been one of those residential pioneers downtown that's had several projects that have been successful. And I expect that this particular project will be successful as well.
Yeah, I would add to that. I'm very impressed that myself and Councilman Hogg took a tour of the building, And these aren't cookie cutter apartments. It's a historic building and it's being restored to reflect the building. So I think it's a great job. And I'm very excited about the addition to downtown.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd also like to thank Mr. Petcher for the hard work that he's doing and the improvements that you're putting in. I took a tour as well. My apartment you have already leased out, so I'm on the waiting list for that one. But just, I mean, absolutely beautiful. The character in the building is just awesome, so thank you.
I would agree with that. Is there anybody on the council has not gone and seen his apartments? You need to go. You need to get down there. It's amazing what has been done down there. Absolutely amazing.
Marty, regarding the parking issue, I don't think it's a dead issue. I think we still need to work with Mr. Petrie.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Council Memo 503-17, resolution authorizing execution of an employment agreement for city manager, still to be submitted. So if it will be submitted, it'll be on the dais tomorrow. If it's not on the dais tomorrow, it'll be pulled. It's in contracts. The items will be reviewed by Public Service Committee, who will report on any issues tomorrow. Just to go one more thing on 507-17, we spent, I think 8 hours, Jim, Trisna, 9 hours. Much of it was on the road, but we spent a lot of time in these fields, really really taking a look at them. A couple other things that didn't even come up, which we talked about with our consultant is glued seams versus stitched together seams. And there's a lot of things that you don't see visually on these fields that, you know, without pulling the fields apart, that you really can't tell what they are. But I do want to invite the field turf gentleman back up to explain it's not ground up tires, but if you can come up and explain what that is.
Do you have a question, Jim? Are you referring to the cool play?
No, the rubber pieces. Well, I mean both, but yes.
Yeah, well, there's it is recycled tires, the rubber, but there's multiple ways to process it. So the way that we do it in the product that we specified is it's cryogenically processed, so that the tires are frozen cryogenically and then shattered with a hammer mill to get smaller sized particles and more evenly sized particles that match up with the sand, so that we're able to maintain that 3-layer profile I mentioned earlier, so that they don't separate. Because on our voluntary alternate was a less expensive product, which I think more matches what Tom's referring to. The typical profile is sand and then all rubber on top, and it's usually an ambient rubber, meaning it's just tires that are shredded at room temperature. It's a much more simple process. It's more readily available, and it's also what we use in our more basic system. And so that's one of our big differentiators in our product that we have bid, is that we use cryogenic rubber. It allows the infill to stay in suspension in that 3-layer profile instead of separating, so that you're playing on a pretty even mixture of the sand and rubber, which ensures solid footing versus playing on in essence, all rubber and just having some sand on the bottom. And that's really the biggest differentiator, and is why, 21 NFL teams and a lot of D1 schools and a lot of high schools purchase our product. It costs a little bit more to have that infill profile, but it gives more solid footing and it stays in place better, needs a little bit less maintenance. And that's why we use cryogenic rubber.
Okay, that's all I had on that.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you.
And there is a request for executive session, but there is one more thing I want to report on. As I ran into somebody at Jewel on Sunday, and I'll just fill everyone in tomorrow, just in case they're watching.
Next is public comments. Is there anyone that would like to speak under public comments this evening? Seeing none, is there a motion to go into closed session to discuss personnel, collective bargaining, land acquisition, or conveyance pending or threatened litigation, after which the meeting will be adjourned?
So moved.
Second.
Motion seconded to approve. Councilman Dickinson?
Aye.
Councilwoman Gavin?
Aye.
Councilman Girl?
Aye.
Councilman Hug?
A quick question, Marty, where did our clock go?
I asked that earlier. Nobody seems to know.
There, it's over here, it's being reset.
Oh, okay. Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye.
Motion carried.
It's 6:25, Laura.